The stage lights at Birmingham's Resorts World Arena blazed with their usual intensity, casting dramatic shadows across the massive crowd of 15,000 metal fans who had gathered for what many suspected might be one of Ozzy Osbourne's final performances in his beloved hometown. The energy in the venue was absolutely electric. 3 generations of Black Sabbath devotees united in their reverence for the Prince of Darkness, singing along to every word of classics that had defined heavy metal for over 5 decades. The crowd was a living tapestry of rock and roll history. Grizzled veterans wearing faded tour shirts from the 1970s stood shoulder to shoulder with teenagers experiencing their first metal concert, while middle-aged fans brought their own children to witness a legend who had shaped their youth and would soon retire from touring forever. The air thrummed with anticipation and nostalgia, creating an atmosphere that felt both celebratory and bittersweet. At 75, Ozzy commanded the stage with the same magnetic presence that had made him a legend, though those closest to him could see the toll that age and years of hard living had taken on his once invincible frame. His movements were more deliberate now, his voice requiring more conscious effort to reach the soaring notes that had once come effortlessly during his youth. But his connection with the audience remained as powerful as ever, that indefinable chemistry between performer and crowd that transformed a concert from mere entertainment into something approaching a spiritual experience. If you're enjoying this story so far, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could show your support with a like. Your encouragement means the world to writers like me and helps stories like this reach more readers. The show had been progressing beautifully through a carefully curated setlist of fan favorites, each song greeted with thunderous appreciation from the audience. The band was tight, the sound was perfect, and Ozzy's performance was reminding everyone why he'd earned the title of heavy metal's most enduring frontman. The evening felt like a celebration of an incredible career and a fitting tribute to Birmingham's most famous musical export. It was during an instrumental break in Mr. Crowley that Sharon Osbourne appeared at the side of the stage, holding what appeared to be an official-looking envelope with careful handling that suggested its contents were both precious and fragile. She caught her husband's attention with the subtle signal they'd developed over decades of working together, gesturing for him to come closer to the stage edge where she was standing with an expression of concern and gentle urgency. The interaction was brief but clearly significant, with Sharon handing Ozzy the envelope and whispering something in his ear that made his performer's confident expression shift dramatically towards something more vulnerable and uncertain. She squeezed his hand briefly, a gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by the fans in the front rows, who began to sense that something unscripted and potentially emotional was about to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ozzy said, his distinctive Birmingham accent carrying clearly through the arena's sophisticated sound system, "I've just been handed something that, well, I think I need to share this with all of you. Sometimes life gives you moments that are bigger than music, bigger than entertainment, and I believe this is one of those moments." The crowd settled into curious attention as Ozzy carefully opened the envelope with uncharacteristic hesitation, his usually confident stage movements replaced by something more cautious and reverent. As he began to read the contents silently, his expression changed dramatically, the rock star bravado melting away to reveal something raw and deeply human that few people had ever witnessed during his decades of public performance. The letter was from 11-year-old Emma Patterson, a terminally ill child from Manchester who had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia 6 months earlier. Her parents had written to Ozzy's management team to explain that Emma was facing her final weeks of life, and that her greatest wish was to let Ozzy know how much his music had meant to her during her treatment. She had specifically requested that her message be read at one of his concerts, wanting other fans to understand the healing power that music could provide, even in the darkest and most hopeless circumstances. "This letter is from a very special young lady named Emma," Ozzy began, his voice already growing thick with emotion as he processed what he was about to share with 15,000 strangers. "She's 11 years old, and she's facing something that no child should ever have to face. But she wanted all of you to hear her story, and I think we need to listen." The arena, which moments before had been filled with the typical noise and movement of a rock concert, conversations, laughter, the rustle of merchandise bags, fell into complete and profound silence. 15,000 people seemed to collectively hold their breath as they realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Not a performance or a scripted moment designed for entertainment, but genuine human vulnerability being shared in real time by someone they'd come to see as larger than life. "Dear Mr. Osbourne," Ozzy began reading aloud, his voice breaking slightly on the formal address. "My name is Emma Patterson, and I'm 11 years old. I probably won't be here much longer because I'm very sick with something called leukemia, but I wanted you to know that your music has been my best friend during all the scary parts of being in the hospital." The silence in the massive venue became even more profound, if such a thing was possible. Parents in the audience instinctively pulled their own children closer, while others reached for the hands of friends or partners, seeking comfort in human connection as they processed the weight of what they were hearing. Ozzy continued reading, his voice breaking more noticeably on certain words. "When I have to get treatments that hurt really bad, I put on my headphones and listen to your songs, and somehow I feel braver than I thought I could be. My mum says your music is too loud and scary for a little girl, but I think she doesn't understand that sometimes you need loud music to match how big your feelings are inside. And my feelings are enormous right now." By this point, tears were streaming freely down Ozzy's face, though he continued reading with visible determination to honor Emma's request that her words be shared with his audience. The crowd remained absolutely silent, creating an impossible intimacy within the massive venue that seemed to suspend the normal rules of public gatherings and transform strangers into a community united by shared emotion. "I know you probably get lots of letters from sick kids," the letter continued, "but I wanted you to know that when I listen to your music, I don't feel like a sick kid anymore. I feel like someone strong and brave, like maybe I could be in a band too someday if I get better. And if I don't get better, I want you to know that your music will keep playing in heaven, and maybe I can sing along from there, and maybe it won't hurt anymore." The silence in the arena was broken only by the sound of Ozzy's quiet sobs and the rustling of thousands of people reaching for tissues, sleeves, or whatever they could find to wipe their eyes. What had begun as a typical rock concert celebrating decades of musical rebellion had transformed into something resembling a collective moment of grief, hope, and shared humanity that none of them had expected or prepared for. "The letter goes on," Ozzy said, struggling to compose himself enough to continue while also honoring his commitment to share Emma's complete message with the audience. "Emma asks if I could play a song for all the sick children who use music to feel stronger and braver, and for their families who are scared and don't know what to do with feelings that are too big for regular words to handle." He looked up from the letter to address the crowd directly, his makeup streaked with tears, but his voice gaining strength from the visible support and emotional connection he could feel emanating from the audience. "This little girl, she understands something about music that some people spend their whole lives trying to figure out. She gets that it's not just entertainment or rebellion or even artistic expression. It's medicine. It's courage. It's a way of connecting with something bigger than ourselves when everything else feels hopeless and impossible." The crowd's response was unlike anything typically heard at a rock concert. Instead of cheers or applause or the usual expressions of audience approval, there was a low murmur of voices, people talking quietly to those around them, sharing their own stories of loss, illness, or times when music had provided comfort during circumstances that seemed impossible to endure. The communal nature of the moment seemed to give everyone permission to be vulnerable in a way that public spaces rarely allowed or encouraged. "Emma passed away 2 days ago," Ozzy announced, his voice barely audible through his emotion, but carrying clearly through the arena's sound system to every corner of the massive space. "Her parents wanted me to have this letter, and they specifically asked if I would dedicate a song to her memory and to all the children who are fighting battles that adults can barely comprehend, much less handle with the grace and wisdom that Emma showed." The silence that followed was profound and sacred, stretching across the arena like a shared prayer or meditation. 15,000 people, united in their recognition of a young life cut tragically short and their growing awareness of music's power to provide comfort and courage in circumstances that seem to offer neither hope nor meaning. Many in the crowd were crying openly now, tough-looking metalheads with tears streaming down their faces, parents holding their own children a little tighter while contemplating the unimaginable grief of Emma's family, teenagers suddenly aware of their own mortality and the preciousness of every moment they'd previously taken for granted. "I want everyone here to understand something incredibly important," Ozzy said, his voice growing stronger as he channeled his grief into purpose and his personal pain into a message that could honor Emma's memory. Emma's letter reminds us that music isn't just about entertainment or rebellion or even artistic expression. It's about connection, about helping each other feel less alone when life becomes unbearable, about finding strength we didn't know we possessed. He gestured toward the massive crowd, his eyes scanning the faces that were looking back at him with unprecedented attention and emotional openness, all of them united in this unexpected moment of shared vulnerability. Every single one of you has probably used music to get through something difficult. Heartbreak, loss, fear, loneliness, despair. And tonight, we're going to honor Emma's memory by remembering that music is one of the most powerful forces for healing and hope that humans have ever created or discovered. The song that followed was performed with an intensity and emotional honesty that transcended mere musical technique or professional showmanship. Ozzy poured every ounce of his grief, his respect for Emma's extraordinary courage, and his gratitude for music's healing power into a performance that left not a single person in the arena unmoved or unchanged by what they had experienced together. The crowd sang along, not with the typical energy of a rock concert, loud, rebellious, celebratory, but with the reverence of a hymn or prayer, understanding instinctively that they were participating in something sacred, something that honored not just Emma's memory, but the power of music to create community among strangers and comfort among those who were suffering. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the evening was what happened during the song's instrumental bridge, a moment that no one had planned or orchestrated. As if by unspoken agreement that emerged from the collective consciousness of the crowd, thousands of phone screens lit up throughout the arena, not to record the moment for social media or personal documentation, but to create a sea of light in Emma's memory, transforming the venue into something resembling a candlelight vigil where strangers mourned together for a child none of them had known, but all of them now carried in their hearts. The gesture was completely spontaneous and entirely collective, spreading through the audience like a gentle wave of shared intention and respect. The effect was breathtaking, thousands of small lights creating a galaxy of remembrance and hope within the darkened arena, each light representing not just a phone, but a person who had been moved by Emma's courage and wisdom. When the song ended, the silence stretched on for several minutes that felt like hours. There was no applause, no cheering, no typical concert crowd noise or expressions of appreciation. Just 15,000 people processing what they had experienced together, a moment of genuine human connection that had nothing to do with celebrity worship or entertainment consumption and everything to do with shared recognition of life's fragility and music's miraculous power to help us endure it. Emma's parents asked me to tell you something else, Ozzy finally said, breaking the reverent silence with words that carried the weight of a message from beyond. They said that Emma always believed that music created families among strangers, that people who loved the same songs were connected to each other, even if they never met face to face. Looking out at all of you tonight, seeing how you've honored her memory with your attention and your tears and your light, I think she was absolutely right about that. The remainder of the concert was unlike anything Ozzy had ever performed in over 5 decades of live shows. Each song was dedicated to someone's memory. Children who had lost battles with various illnesses, adults who had found courage through music during impossible circumstances, family members who had used concerts and albums as ways to stay connected across distance or death or time itself. The evening became less about entertainment and more about collective healing, with music serving as the medium for processing grief and celebrating the resilience of the human spirit in the face of circumstances that seemed designed to break it. Songs that audiences had heard hundreds of times suddenly carried new weight and meaning, transformed by the context of shared mourning and mutual support. "Mama, I'm Coming Home" became a tribute to all the children who had died too young, with the entire audience singing as if they were Emma's voice reaching back to comfort her parents. "Shot in the Dark" was reimagined as an anthem of hope for anyone fighting battles they weren't sure they could win. Even Crazy Train took on new significance as a celebration of the beautiful chaos of life and the importance of holding on to each other during the wildest rides. Social media exploded in the hours following the concert, but the posts were markedly different from typical concert coverage focused on performance highlights or celebrity moments. Instead, fans shared deeply personal stories about their own experiences with loss, illness, and the ways music had provided comfort during their darkest and most desperate moments. Emma's story became a catalyst for thousands of people to reflect on music's role as emotional medicine and community builder. The hashtag #BoreForEmma began trending worldwide within hours, with people sharing not just their concert experiences, but their own stories of finding strength and courage through music during circumstances that seemed impossible to survive. Parents wrote about children who had fought terminal illnesses with the help of favorite songs. Adults described using music to cope with depression, or anxiety, or grief, and musicians at every level talked about the responsibility they felt to create art that could provide genuine comfort to people who were suffering. What happened in Birmingham tonight wasn't really about me or my music or my career, Ozzy said in a statement released through his social media accounts the following day. It was about Emma's wisdom and courage, her understanding that music creates connections between people who need to feel less alone in their struggles. Every person in that arena became part of her family for those few hours, united by her extraordinary spirit and by the recognition that we're all fighting battles that require more strength than we think we possess. The letter itself, which Emma's parents had given explicit permission to share publicly in hopes of helping other families facing similar circumstances, was published in its entirety in several major newspapers and music magazines. Its simple eloquence and mature insight into music's healing power resonated far beyond the metal community, prompting widespread discussions about the role of art in healthcare, the ways children process terminal illness with wisdom that often surpasses adult understanding, and the importance of allowing young people to find comfort and strength wherever they could discover it. Emma's parents, David and Sarah Patterson, established a comprehensive foundation in their daughter's memory, focused on providing musical instruments, instruction, and therapy programs to children undergoing medical treatment in hospitals throughout the UK and beyond. The organization's mission statement, written partially in Emma's own words from letters and journal entries she had left behind, emphasized music's power to help young patients feel braver and stronger, like someone who could be in a band too someday, even when everything else feels scary and impossible. The foundation's first major fundraising event was a concert featuring Ozzy and numerous other artists who had been profoundly moved by Emma's story and wanted to honor her memory through meaningful action. But rather than a typical charity concert focused on entertainment value, it was structured more like the Birmingham show had become: intimate, reverent, focused on music's healing power rather than celebrity spectacle or commercial success. Proceeds from the event funded comprehensive music therapy programs in children's hospitals throughout Europe, providing not just instruments and instruction, but also emotional support systems that helped young patients and their families process the complex feelings that accompanied serious illness and uncertain prognoses. 6 months after that transformational night in Birmingham, Ozzy received hundreds of letters from other terminally ill children and their families, all inspired by Emma's courage to reach out and share how music had impacted their experiences with illness and treatment. Each letter was answered personally by Ozzy or Sharon, and many led to hospital visits, video calls, or songs dedicated at future concerts to specific children who were fighting their own battles with extraordinary grace. Emma taught me something I should have understood decades ago, Ozzy reflected in a comprehensive interview marking the first anniversary of her death. Music isn't just my career or my artistic expression or even my legacy. It's a responsibility to something much larger than myself. When someone tells you that your art helped them feel braver during the scariest moments of their life, you realize that creating music isn't just about self-expression or commercial success. It's about service to others, about contributing to the healing of a world that contains far too much suffering and far too little comfort. The impact of Emma's letter and the Birmingham concert extended far beyond individual stories of comfort and healing, inspiring systemic changes in how medical professionals approached pediatric care. Hospitals began incorporating more comprehensive music therapy into treatment programs, recognizing that Emma's instinctive understanding of music's healing power was supported by substantial research about art's role in pain management, emotional processing, and overall well-being during medical treatment. Musicians across all genres began talking more openly about their responsibility to create art that could provide genuine comfort to people facing difficult circumstances. The conversation within the music industry shifted from pure entertainment toward music as a form of community care, with artists at every level considering how their work might serve people who were using it as emotional medicine and psychological support. Record labels began supporting more projects focused on therapeutic music, while streaming services created specialized playlists for hospital patients, grieving families, and others who were using music as a tool for emotional survival. The music therapy profession experienced unprecedented growth and recognition, with Emma's story serving as a powerful example of what trained professionals had known for decades about music's healing properties. But perhaps most importantly, Emma's story reminded both artists and audiences that the most powerful moments in music often had nothing to do with technical proficiency, commercial success, critical acclaim, or industry recognition. They emerged from genuine human connection, from the recognition that art, at its best, served as a bridge between people who needed to feel less alone in their struggles and more connected to something larger than their individual pain. 2 years later, when Ozzy announced his official retirement from touring, he specifically mentioned Emma in his farewell statement to fans around the world. "A wise young woman once taught me that music creates families among strangers, that people who love the same songs are connected to each other, even if they never meet face to face." To everyone who has ever found comfort, courage, or companionship in music, you are all part of Emma's family, and her legacy lives on every time a song helps someone feel braver than they thought possible. The Birmingham concert became legendary, not for its musical performances or technical excellence, but for the collective moment of vulnerability and healing that had occurred when 15,000 strangers chose to grieve together for a child they had never met. It demonstrated that music's greatest power lay not in its ability to entertain or impress audiences, but in its capacity to create sacred spaces where people could process the deepest emotions and most difficult experiences that life inevitably delivered to every human being. Emma Patterson's letter had accomplished exactly what she had hoped when she asked her parents to send it. It reminded everyone present that music was indeed medicine, that concerts could serve as healing rituals, and that the greatest gift artists could offer their audiences was not just their talent or charisma, but their willingness to create spaces where people felt safe to be fully human, completely vulnerable, and genuinely connected to something larger than their individual struggles and fears. The 11-year-old girl who wrote about needing loud music to match how big your feelings are inside had perfectly captured something profound and essential about art's role in human survival and spiritual growth. Her wisdom, shared through tears on a Birmingham stage, continued to resonate in the hearts and minds of everyone who had witnessed that unprecedented moment of collective grief, hope, and healing, reminding them that sometimes the most important truths come from the most unexpected sources. Thank you for experiencing this deeply moving story about the power of music to heal and connect us all in our shared humanity. If Emma's courage and wisdom touched your heart, or if you've ever found strength in music during difficult times, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could show your support with a like. Your engagement helps stories like this reach more readers and reminds us all that art's greatest purpose is often its ability to help us feel less alone in our struggles and more connected to the healing power of human compassion.